All right, so picking up where we left off last time, remember that we started looking at Jdbc, which is how you program in Java, one of the ways how you programmatically connect to a database. Up till now, we've been using MySQL Workbench, which is a full integrated development environment. We'll continue to use this to refine our queries. But ultimately, when you connect to a database, you want to do it through a program because you want to automate things. So you might have a nice looking front end on a web page or something, and then the middle tier is responsible for connecting to the database to display all the data. We talked about how it was a perfect illustration of dependency inversion because we are going to be writing towards the API, which is the Java Database Connectivity API, Jdbc. We also outlined the process. We need to create a connection to our database. That means that we need our username, password, and URL. And I found my password, and so I put it in there. Then we create or prepare our query. All right, so we prepare the query, then we execute the query. If it returns results, and that's what we're going to look at first with select statements. If it returns results, then we have to process those results. And then finally, throughout the entire process, we have to make sure to clean up after ourselves and clean up these resources. Because once you've made 30 persistent connections, that's it, you're locked out. The 31st connection will not work, okay? All right, so here's our outline. Right? Remember that we need to connect to the database, and to do that, we have a driver manager that can get the connection. And remember that we moved off the URL, the username, and the password to a separate file because we don't want to be repeating those over and over again, right? In fact, creating a connection is one of the most common things that we could do. If I move that off to another class called a factory function, a connection factory, then that's going to be worth bonus points in your project. But otherwise, let's jump down here immediately to 4, and let's close our resources. So once I have the connection, I need to close that connection. Now, the way that I've declared it up here means that I can't do that unless I bring this out up above. Right, there we go. And then I will initialize it right here. Once I've done that, then of course down here I can close it. I faced the same problem that I had before, that I'm forced to surround every single time I call something in the Jdbc library, I'm forced to surround it with a try catch. And again, our solution here is just simply going to be to rethrow it, right? Because if the connection, if the closing the connection failed for whatever reason, then there's no reasonable way to recover from that, and we want it to be a fatal error in our program, right? Now remember that I did put in my password, so this should work now, right? Running it, we're good. If you're off campus, just like with MySQL Workbench, you'll need to use a VPN to do this, okay? Because ITS has firewalled off 3306, the port that we're using, from anywhere but on campus, all right? Okay, so let's continue. What are we going to actually do here? Well, we need to create prepare our query, right? And so what are we actually going to do? Let's go ahead and say, let's load up one single person, right? So my task here today is to actually, do we want to load up one person or do we want to load up all the people? Which one do we want to do? We're going to do both, but which one should we do first? One person? Okay. Why would you go to one person? What if I had a function that did that for me already to load up one person? Could I reuse that function? Yeah, probably, right? How? I just need to query all the people IDs, and then from the people IDs, I can load up all the people. So let's go ahead and just do one person for now. Load up one person record with all their emails, all right? Okay, so we need to create our query first of all. And to do that, I'm just simply going to put that into a string. String s is equal to whatever, right? Now inside here, this is where I'm going to put in my select statements. I don't like to write in Java, a bunch of SQL in Java. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to our MySQL Workbench. I'm using my database here, and I'm going to write the query here because I want to make sure that it works and that everything is debugged, right? Let's go ahead and start out by selecting all the people first. Select everything from person, P. Left join or join? Join email E on P dot person ID is equal to E dot person ID, right? Now I'm getting myself because I have two emails there. I'm getting Jeff because there's one email there. But is there a person that I'm missing here if you remember our test data? I wanted to make sure that I had a variety of test data, so I made sure that there was at least one person with 0 emails. Are they showing up here? Nope. So what kind of join should I be doing? A left join, right? All right. Now suppose that I took this immediately and put it into my, my JDBC code here. Think about what this is going to end up doing. It's going to end up pulling the person ID, the UUID, the last name, the first name, for every single email record for me, right? In other words, it's pulling across duplicate data, right? That this big giant UUID is being pulled across twice, right? So that's not what I want. I mean, that's perfectly fine to do that over here in MySQL Workbench because you're working with SQL directly and we're debugging stuff. So I'm not going to actually use that query, right? This query pulls too much data over the wire. And by wire, I mean networking, because that's what we're doing. We're networking over to a database over in the shore basement or wherever it is now, right? And that means that I'm pulling that data across the wire. That is one of the most expensive things that you can do. Networking is going to be way slower than a processor or memory, even on an old computer. So I don't want to pull over all the data. Let's just go ahead and select everything from person, right? We'll wait on their emails later on, right? There we go. Now I'm only pulling, and now I don't need a left join at all because I'm not doing any joins. I'm pulling all the information from the person table here. That looks a lot better. But you wanted to do it for one person. So how should we do that? Select everything from person. Where? How do I identify a person? There are two ways that I could identify a person here, right? Where person ID is equal to 1, and I'm only pulling across myself. Or what's another way that I could have done this? Select everything from person where their UUID is equal to something, right? And I don't know whose UUIDs are there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and execute this again, and let's go ahead and grab that UUID for John Smith. Copy. Can I just copy that one, hopefully, and put it right here? Yep, there we go. There, now I'm pulling across John Smith. Which one do you want to do? Right? Do you only have to choose one? Right? I don't think you have to choose one. Let's go ahead and do both eventually, right? But let's go ahead and start with the more straightforward one here, where we're selecting everything from the person by their ID, right? So I'm going to go ahead and cut and paste that. Right, there we go. And let's go ahead and get rid of that. There we go. Right, there's my query string. In fact, I'm going to give it a better name, query. Okay, I'm going to select everything from person where person ID is equal to 1. Now, is that going to be very functional if you only ever select that one person? No. So to do, let's come back and parameterize this. Parameterize this eventually. Right? Because I don't want to just do it for person 1, person ID 1. I want to do this for any person that you would want. 2, 3, 4, whatever. All right? But let's go ahead and get the rest of this working first. Okay? I've already got my connection. Now I need to prepare my statement. So I'm going to I created my query. I need a prepared statement. PS is equal to, we don't call constructors in JDBC. Instead, we rely on the connection to prepare my statement. There we go. Using the query. There. And we need to import this, of course, and it's part of the JDBC library, which is java.sql. Right? Now, there are other statements, other statement types. There are just regular old statements. I'm not even going to cover them. We're going to talk about why we don't cover them later on, because you never use anything other than a prepared statement. It protects you from what are called SQL injection attacks. Okay? All right. Well, I have the same exact problem as before. I need to surround this with a try catch. There we go. And I'm also going to throw a runtime exception here and catch and release. There. I'm going to continue in this try block here. I've got my prepared statement. The next thing I need to do is I need to execute it, which gives me a result set, RS for short here, right? ps.execute query, isn't it? Execute query, there we go. Execute query, and that will give me a result set. Once again, you need to import this because it is part of the java.sql library, the Jdbc library, okay? Once I've got my result set, it looks something like this, right? That there is this, there's this basically a table, right? Where we've got a header, person ID, UUID, last name, first name, and then we've got data in here, right? Now, if I had multiple versions of this, what I need is a way to iterate over them, right? Well, if I had 4 records in the return statement in the result set, that means I need to go to the first one, process it, then go on to the second one, process it, go on to the third one, process it, etc., until I get down to the end and there's no other values to process, right? Now, I'm only expecting one value here, right? If I had expected multiple values, what I could do is a while loop. Why did I immediately go to a while loop, by the way? Do you know how many records that are going to come out of this database? Nope. So it's a while loop while I still have records to process. The way that I do that is rs.next. RS is the result set. Initially, it's pointing to before the first record. rs.next will then go to the first record. rs.next. It returns true that entire time because it's pointing to a valid record, right? Each one of these valid records, right? The first one, rs.next, 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 and then what happens after that? It returns false. So it's kind of like a scanner. While you have a next line, go to the next line and process that line, right? And so I'm going to process it now. The way that I do that is I pull out any values that I want. For example, the last name, right, is equal to rs.getString, and then you need to name it the last name. Do you remember I told you that we should probably follow a lower camel casing convention on everything in our database? And here's why. It's going to be a direct translation from the last name column to a last name field in the person class. There's no guesswork here, right? Because I'm following the same exact naming conventions. First name is equal to rs.getString. First name. Great. Oops. Now I've got those two things. What else do I want? Well, what else is going to be coming across the wire here? The UUID, right? Not here because I'm selecting this right here, right? The person ID, but I already have that, right? The UUID, the last name, and the first name. So let's go ahead and get that one last element there. String UUID is equal to rs.getString, because a UUID is a string at the end of the day. UUID, right? Now, should I leave it as a UUID? I don't think we took off for it, but if you used a string in your project, we pointed out Java has a built-in UUID class. You should probably be using it. So I will change this to an actual UUID. UUID is equal to UUID dot from string, and then I will say UUID str. And I'm going to have to rename my other one up there UUID str because, of course, I can't use those two same variable names. Right? Now, that's if there's multiple. What if you're only expecting one? Should I go into this while loop? I'm expecting at most one, right? Should I go into a while loop? If you're expecting 0 or 1, do you want to loop at all? Or do you want something else? How do I know if there's a record there? If there's a record, right, then go ahead and process it. Otherwise, let's go ahead and add some error handling code here, right? What I'll do is I'll say throw a new runtime exception, right? Exception, right? No record with person ID equal to 1. That's very useful, right? It tells me that what the person ID is trying to query, and it throws it and says that there's no ID with no such record there. Once I've got the UUID, the first name and the last name, I can now create a person record. P is equal to new person. And I forget what the constructor is, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. I need to import it first because I've moved everything off to a different package. But we take the last name and the first name. It looks like our initial design did not have a UUID, right? So we should forget about it. No, we should redesign it, right? Private, oops, home row there. Private, oops, and off, private, UUID, UUID, okay? And here I need to import that. And I'm going to generate a new constructor based on that. So let's come up here to source, generate a constructor using fields. I want everything except for the emails because I don't have emails yet, okay? Great. Now over here in the JDBC demo, I can pass off those three things. The UUID, was it the first name, last name, or last name, first name? I forget. Looks like last name comes first. So last name, first name, right? And we've got our person. Let's make sure that it works by printing it out or something, right? So system.out.println p, okay? Now, I'm pretty confident that this will work, but let's go ahead and try it out. I'll always do some ad hoc testing here. Hey, I'm the first person. Wonderful, it works. Are we done though? What did we forget? We prepared our query, we executed the query, we processed our results. What did we not do throughout the entire process there? Well, we did close up the resource down here, right? We closed the connection, but guess what? Prepared statements and result sets, they also are resources. Those, under the hood, it could potentially be opening up multiple connections. So what you need to do is you need to close those resources immediately after you're done using it. Now, am I done using it here at this point, rs.close? No, because I've not yet processed those results. So I'm going to go ahead and move that down to after I've processed the results. And then ps.close. Why did I go in that order? Right, remember tables. If you're going to have a parent table, the parent has to exist before the child. If you're going to delete things, then you delete the children records and then the parent records. So if I create it, connection, prepared statement, result set, I need to close it in the reverse order. Result set, prepared statement, and connection. Right? And it'll still work, but now I'm actually cleaning up after myself and all those resources. Right? That looks pretty good, but should I be doing this in a main? This seems like it should be a utility function somewhere, right? So let's go ahead and grab all of this stuff. And let's go ahead and create a new class here. If we want, we could use database utils or whatever. Let's go ahead and create a class, I don't know, a data loader, right? Because that's what it does. It loads up data, right? And let's go ahead and add a new static person, load person function here, method, right? And that's where I'll put my code instead, okay? All right, and then of course I need to document this, right? To do. Leave that documentation for later. Because I haven't even actually figured out how I want to load my person yet. Remember that I left a to-do down here. We're not always going to be loading up me. Sometimes we want to load up Jeff. Sometimes we want to load up John, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass this in, person ID, as an integer, okay? There we go. Where's my person now, right? There we go. Instead of printing it out, I'm going to return that person, return P. Now, is that a good idea right there? In fact, the compiler is saving me for myself here. Should I immediately end the execution of this method? I've not closed my resources yet, right? In fact, that's why it's complaining here, is because it's unreachable code, right? I'm returning this, right? And so the compiler caught it, but for different reasons there. So I should not be returning this person. What I should be doing is I should be returning them down here after I've closed everything up. Return P, right? That of course means that I need to move the declaration up here, person P, and then I will initialize it right there, right? All right, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and call this JDBC demo here. Let's go ahead and say person P is equal to data loader dot load person. And that's me again. Remember, I'm person 1, ID 1, system.out.println P. Okay? It will still work. Right? There I am again. But now let's load up Jeff. Right? Is that going to work? Remember, Jeff was 2. It still loads me up. Why? Remember my to-do over here. I need to parameterize this eventually. In other words, I don't want this to always be hard-coded to 1. I want it to be whatever you pass into this function right here. Okay? Now, your immediate intuition might be, oh, okay, that's fine. We can go ahead and concatenate it. Never, ever, 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 ever do that. Right? This is susceptible to what's called an SQL injection. Right? This will be major points off in your project if you end up doing that. Instead, what we need to do is we need to parameterize it properly. And the way that you do that in JDBC is by putting in a question mark there. By the way, the other, semicolon, that's kind of optional. I like to put it there just because I'm usually copy pasting from an IDE like this, and so I leave it in there. But you can go ahead and get rid of it if you want, because there are 2 semicolons right next to each other or in close proximity. It looks weird, right? But I'll go ahead and leave it in there, okay? All right, that means that we need to replace this question mark eventually with the actual person ID. That is the purpose of a prepared statement. ps.set int, the parameter index there is the first parameter, and we'll set it to person ID. Unfortunately, they don't follow the convention of 0 indexing. This will be the first parameter. We'll see examples later on when there are multiple parameters. If I had 3 question marks in my query, then I would just say 1, 2, and 3, right? Set int the first one to that one, whatever, right? Now, let's go ahead and try it over here in the JDBC demo and see if it loads up Jeff instead. There we go. Jeff Burke is now loaded. What if I load up person 3? Right? That was John Smith, I think. There's John Smith. What if I were to load up person 4? Did I put that data in my database? Nope. So we get an exception, the exception that we were thrown, that there's no record with person ID 1. I need to fix that too, right? So let's come back over there and no longer hard code this to 1. This is just a message though. So go ahead and concatenate all you want, right? Because I'm not, that's just a string message for your exception. Right? Looks like everything's being closed up. Looks like we're only querying 1 person. Great. Let's extend it now, right? What's wrong with this? There are no emails, right? So let's go ahead and create another query here. And string query. If I have the person already and their ID, right? Then what could I do? I could query the email table. What would that look like over here? Right? Select everything from email where person ID is equal to 1. Right? And those are 2 weird emails. Did I put those in? I don't remember. I think I randomly generated them with Mockaroo. That's why they look weird. But otherwise, there's my query that I want to execute based on the given person. So I'm going to go ahead and call it query and select everything. But again, I'm not going to hard code 1. I'm immediately going to parameterize it. I can't have 2 queries with the same name. Right? So let's go ahead and give these better names. What is this a query for? It's a query for the person. What is this a query for? It's a query for the email. Right? Great. Let's go ahead and update this now because I need query person. Right? And then down here, after I've created the person, right, I can create another prepared statement. Prepared statement, PS2, right? That's kind of bad too, is equal to con.prepare statement. I can't reuse the same prepared statement, by the way, because it was prepared for this query right here, okay? I don't want to close it either because I'm not done with it until after I'm done with this result set. I'd be pulling the rug out from under myself. So I'll just go ahead and create a new prepared statement here using the query email. There we go. All right. I need to get a result set from that. So result set rs2 is equal to ps2 dot execute query. Oh, and then one thing I forgot to do here, ps2 dot set int. I need to do the same thing as before, that I'm setting it to the first parameter there to the person ID. This parameter is now getting set to that person ID. Okay. All right. And then I can process it, right? Here I am going to do a while loop because they might have multiple emails. They could have 0 emails, in which case rs2 dot next would end up immediately returning null or false, and I would end up not having any emails. String address is equal to rs2 dot get string, and that's the address. Because again, if I look over here and select all the emails with that particular person, right, the address is what I want. Okay. Once I've got that address, I can add it to my person. p.add email address. Do you remember when we were designing the person class and I said, well, you could do it this way, where you're forced to create an entire list of emails and provide it at instantiation in a constructor? Or you know what? This is a lot more flexible. And now we see why it's a lot more flexible. Because I'm going to be processing data in a loop, and I don't want to create a temporary list just to hand that list off to somebody else. I want an add email record right here. Right? Hopefully you're following that pattern in all of your stuff. Okay? Don't forget to close your resources. rs2.close, ps2.close. Right? con.close? Nope. We're still doing stuff. Don't pull out the rug from under yourself. All right, good. Now at this point, yeah, you can go ahead and go with PS1, PS2, PS3, RS1, RS2, RS3, but I want to make this a little bit better. Just like we renamed the query for person and query for email, what is this prepared statement doing? Because sometimes you're going to forget. You're going to screw up and you're going to say, all right, I'll rs1 dot next, right? And that's not going to work. Right? What am I doing here? I'm processing the result set for the emails. So I should probably name these appropriately. PS for let's go ahead and highlight this, right click it, and let's see, refactor, rename. What would be a good name for this? PS for person. PS short for prepared statement. Good. RS. Let's go ahead and refactor that and rename that. And that's result set for person. And now there's no guesswork here at all. Anytime you type rs.person, you know that you are processing the person result set. Versus PS2 here, that's going to be for emails. Refactor that, rename, and this is going to be PS for email, if you want, person and emails there. And then finally this RS2, this is result set for emails. And there's only 3 instances, so I'll just go ahead and copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. There. Much better, okay? Of course, I still need to write my documentation here, but let's test it. Come over here to this, and let's see if it works. Oops, what was wrong? Oh yeah, I need to, let's go back to me, right, instead of a non-existent person, and let's run it again. Oops, still something wrong here. Let's give myself some more room here. Cannot invoke object because this emails is null. Good, all right. That's pointing out a flaw in our implementation of the person class here. I called this constructor right here, but did we ever actually initialize that email list? Nope, so let's go ahead and initialize that now. New array list of emails, there we go. And now it should run, I'm pretty sure. Although it probably won't print anything out, right? How do I know that I actually loaded up those 2 weird emails that were in the database? Well, let's come back over here to the toString method and realize that we're only printing out the last name, first name. Let's go ahead and update this now, right? In fact, let's change this so that, no, I'll go ahead and go like this. Parenthesis plus this dot UUID plus closing parenthesis, end the line. And I'm not going to return this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say string s, or result, let's say. Result is equal to that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a loop to concatenate all of the emails. Let's go for string email in this dot emails, right? Result plus equals, I'll tab over so that I have a little bit of indentation. Then I will print out the email, and then I'll end the line so that each one of them is on their own line, right? And then at the end, I will return result. All I'm doing is concatenating a bunch of stuff together. And there we go. There's my UUID, and those are the two weird emails that we saw coming out, right? Visual inspection here. Are those the two emails? Rallington and Rodden or delicious.com, right? That looks like it to me, right? Okay. Cool, right? So there's my first full method that I'm pulling data. Right? How else do we want to pull data? Remember I said that we're eventually going to pull all the people, right? And load up all the people. But how else could you load up a person? We did it over here. What if instead you wanted it to be based on a UUID? All right, let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and, bad habit here, but it's fine. Let's go ahead and copy paste that entire thing. Okay? Now obviously I'm not going to be able to have the exact same function signature here, but instead what I could say is I want to load this person by their UUID. So UUID, UUID. All right. Now both of the there are compiler errors down below that we have to take care of because we haven't actually implemented this function yet. But should I name this something else? Load person by UUID, and then I'll come up here and rename this one to load person by ID. Right? No. Remember one of the parts of polymorphism is that you can have multiple functions with the same name. As long as that one takes an integer and this one takes a UUID, you know which one it is without having to rename it that thing. In fact, this is redundant. By UUID, then I provide the UUID. That's a terrible naming convention, right? Don't repeat yourself. Load the person, and then the parameter is UUID, so obviously it's being loaded up by the UUID. Okay? All right, same basic outline here. We connect to the database, but instead of this query where the person ID is like this, UUID is like that. Oh, should I change this one to UUID as well? Let's come over here and let's go review. If I select everything from the person where that UUID is like that, then I get their first name, last name, UUID, and person ID, right? But can I use a UUID here to find the person? No, there's no UUID here at all. How is a person's email identified? Through this foreign key right here, this person ID. So no, I do not change that one. It's still going to be the person ID, right? Do I have a person ID though to set? Not yet. Right. With the first version, that was given as part of the input to the method. With this version, I'm going to have to do the work myself. Right? All right, so query person. It's not an integer anymore, it's a string, right? Because there is no UUID field in a database. Maybe in Postgres there is, but UUID.toString, right? So I will convert the UUID to a string and set that, that parameter right there, this parameter right here, okay? Now, if that person exists, do I need to pull their UUID? Nope, right? I've already got the UUID. Right? That was given as part of the input, right? Up here. Load person by their UUID and given this UUID right here. Okay? All right, so last name, first name. How do I do the emails now? Right? I don't have a person ID here. Right? But it's in the database. remember that if I query out the person, let's come up here, by their UUID, I can always get their person ID right there. Okay? So let's actually pull that in addition to the first name and last name. That is an integer. Person ID is equal to person.getInt, right? And that's called person ID. There. Now I've got a person ID, and I can go ahead and hand that off to the other one, and it'll load the emails as well. Everything gets closed just fine. I should probably say UUID is equal to UUID. There we go. Right? And we're all good to go here. Let me grab that UUID once more, and let's test it. Right? I think that this is a different person. This is not me. Right? But let's go over to the demo. There's person 1. I'll call it me. And then person P is equal to data loader dot load person, but by their UUID. UUID dot from string. And I'll just go ahead and cut and paste that UUID right there. Okay. And then print out that person as well. Change this to me. Okay. All right. I think that is a different person. That's John Smith. Remember, he didn't have any emails, right? And so we're not getting any emails back. Everything's closed. Everything's great. Right? I know that everything is great over here because I can actually check. You can use show process list to show all of your current connections. Right? There we go. So this one is, the first one is actually MySQL Workbench keeping a persistent connection. And then the second one was another connection to actually execute that query. So I know that there are no connections remaining for my Jdbc over there, from bad Jdbc code. Okay? But that's got me thinking about more design issues here. Right? Let me come back over here. If you wanted to look up somebody by their UUID, right? That means that eventually you would need their actual, remember these are called surrogate keys versus natural keys. The UUID is a natural key because that's assigned outside of our database. The person ID was the surrogate key. Maybe I should have my object here model both of those things. Right? Now that there's a connection to the database, there's a reason for doing this. Private int person ID. Right? Because I'm probably going to want to use that in multiple locations to now get their assets. Right? I would have to go back to the database to find their person ID based on that UUID in order to get their assets. If it was part of the object already and loaded into the object, I wouldn't have to do that double work. Right? That means that there's yet another constructor using fields. There we go. Not the emails though. Generate that. Let's not make the same mistake again that we want to initialize the emails over here. There. Okay. You can add as many constructors as you want, remember, right? To make it more flexible. Over here in the data, over here in the Jdbc demo, the data loader, I will use one. I will use the original one that I just wrote for. Actually, no, I want to use both of them now, right? So new person, and what order was it in? Person ID. There we go. And then this one down here as well. Make sure that you've got the person ID there. Person ID. There. And you can, of course, update the, if you want to, you can update the toString method. I wouldn't in this case because to include the person ID because that's internal to the database. No human needs to see that. Okay? A human needs to see this stuff. Right? And so that's appropriate to put in the toString method. All right, does everything still work? Let's find out. Yay. Now, how do I know that the person ID is getting in there? Right? One thing that you can do is you can set what's called a breakpoint. I think I've demonstrated this before. If not, let's go ahead and review. There we go. So on any line over here, you can double click to the left of the number. And what that does is that sets a breakpoint that you can then, instead of hitting play, you can come up here to the bug icon here. Click that. It'll run the program, switch over to the debugging mode. Right? It'll run the program up till your first breakpoint. There we go. Takes a while, but there we go. Me. right? I can see that's just going to print the toString method. I can expand that out. Did I actually get the person ID? Yes, it's 1. All right. Well, what about that second person? That's a different function, right? Let's go ahead and step, right? And let's look at person P now. Did they get their person ID? Yes, 3. Right? This is a debugger, right? And again, I think I've done this before. If not, this is a review. Or if not, it's new. Otherwise, it's a review. If you want to stop the debugger, you can go ahead and stop it. And you can go back to your Java perspective because you fixed all the bugs. All right? All right, good. So we've got those so far. One last thing I want to do is load up all of the people. So let's say a list of person, everyone, right, is equal to data loader dot load persons, or load everyone, or load people, or whatever, right? I'm not going to have any input there at all because I don't want to load up that particular person or that particular person. I want to load up everybody, okay? Now, I do need to write this, and we're not going to have enough time to do it all today, so we'll continue it on Friday, but let's at least write the outline, okay? Let's come up here, and let's write another data loader over here, function here. Public static list of person, right? Load, what did I call it? Load persons? Persons, there we go, there. Let's go ahead and create a list of persons, right? Results is equal to new array list of persons. And then down here, we'll return the result. I do need to bring all these in because it's part of the Java collections library. There we go. There's an array list. Import that as well. There we go. All right. Now let's outline this. I want to load up everybody, right? So I would probably have a query that looks something like this, right? Select everything from person. Let's go back all the way to our original query here, right? Load up all the people, load up all their emails, right? Something like this. But remember, I do not want to load up duplicate data. Now, it's not that big of a deal with this, but there are only 4 records, who cares? But in a real database system, you could be pulling across millions of records, and millions times however many bytes these are. Now you're needlessly pulling megabytes over the network, terabytes over the network eventually, right? We don't want to do that. So I could select everything from person with no qualifier here. Where ID is equal to this, whatever, right? I get rid of that. Now I'm actually going to process all the people, right? And then I would select everything from email with that person. This seems kind of redundant though, right? DRY, don't repeat yourself. Is there a way that I could reuse the functionality that I've already written? Instead of selecting everything from person, what if I just selected the person ID from persons? What if I did that? Now I've got the IDs. I could hand that off to another function that takes care of all the details for me, right? And that's the way we're going to go next time, okay? I'm not going to load up all the data all at once. Instead, I'm going to load up the data that's necessary in order to get the other data and reuse the functionality that I've already written, that I know works because I did some ad hoc testing, okay? All right, any questions? Otherwise, some housekeeping. Remember the assignment 3 is due this Friday. And next week, you'll be designing your database. And so that when you turn in your next design document next Friday, not this Friday, but the Friday after, that's when we're expecting an ER diagram sketch. We're not expecting you to have it done by then. We want to know what the sketch of your ER diagram looks like so that we know what your design looks like. All right. I'll see you on Friday then. We'll pick it up there.